Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. Webster Tarpley here in Washington, D.C. Take a look at Tarpley.net this morning and see, did the late J.D. Salinger include a satire of George H.W. Bush, Bush the Elder, in his much-read book, The Catcher in the Rye? And this is one that the literary critics seem to have bubbled, but we found it back in 1991 listening to these constant disjointed monologues that Bush the Elder would get into. I was wondering, where does that voice come from? What kind of a disassociated outlook is behind that? And I thought, well, that sounds like Holden Caulfield, right? If you really want to hear about it, the first thing you'll want to know is where I was born and all that David Copperfield kind of stuff, says Holden Caulfield. So remember, in the course of the book, Holden Caulfield flees from his prep school, Pensy Prep, and he goes to New York City, and he meets girl Sally that he's known before, and they go to a matinee performance at the theater. And on the other side of the lobby, there's a guy in one of those very dark gray flannel suits and one of those checkered vests, strictly Ivy League, and they're name-dropping, and he says, his name was George something, I don't even remember, and he went to Andover, a phony. So this phony becomes the archetype of the phony being one of the great themes of the book. He said he had to meet a bunch of phonies for cocktails. I could see them all sitting around in some bar with their checkered vests, criticizing shows and books and women in those tired, snobby voices. Isn't that a figure for George H.W. Bush, Bush the Elder? Take a look. J.D. Salinger, we won't go into a lengthy critique of J.D. Salinger, de mortuis nihil nisi bonum, but maybe he did one interesting thing, which was to launch a satirical barb at George H.W. Bush. So take a look at Tarpley.net. Now I'm proud to say one of the top 100,000 websites in the United States with significant viewers in United Kingdom, Germany, Poland, and other countries. Now let's look at the economic situation. The euro very weak this past week, and this is because of Greece. We'll get maybe a detailed report next week. But Greece, quite possibly on the verge of bankruptcy in the form of having a treasury auction and not being able to sell their government securities. And you've had the British asset Papandreou, the prime minister, out there talking about it. Karaman, these other politicians, they're all hereditary. The names don't change from generation to generation, as you will have noticed. So that means the dollar has been given a respite. The euro down to about 140, 141. And the IMF, of course, demanding full payment. Will Greece have to go to the IMF? Will they have to go to Canossa and beg and plead and kneel in the snow overnight? And that has put the jitters in the New York stock market. The New York stock market has taken a worse beating now in the past 2 weeks than at any time since about March, certainly, in about a year. So the element of fear, volatility, has been massively re-injected into it. Now, in the middle of that, we get the gross domestic product figure, 5.7% increase in the fourth quarter of 2009, which came out this morning, GDP. As pointed out, this is largely building up inventories that had simply been completely depleted. So it is it's nice to have some inventory built back up, but this is not a recovery. And don't make any mistake about it. Also remember, GDP includes everything, including derivatives. Derivatives production is included in the GDP, so that this can easily be bubble economics working again. In other words, purely paper, purely speculative, casino, synthetic derivatives, as Dorgan says. These transactions adding up, and that does not add up to a recovery. Now, Obama says he wants to have jobs. Hum, hum, hum. Let's look at what he's actually up to. He wants a 3-year flexible freeze on the federal budget. Well, this is foolish because if you cut the federal budget in a depression, government-backed economic activity is looming larger and larger as the private sector collapses. And the problem with that is if you then turn around and cut the government sector as well, then you're lowering the overall level of economic activity. You're going to lower your tax rates, tax receipts. And the idea is that you will then have a bigger deficit the following time. In other words, the more you cut the federal budget in a depression, the lower the tax receipts will be, the bigger the deficit will be the next time around. So budget cuts increase the deficit and put you on a path towards hopeless bankruptcy and no way out. Obama wants to have a $5,000 tax break for small businesses that hire somebody. And the word from small business, of course, is there's no demand out there. There's no demand to justify hiring at any price. So the hiring will not occur. This mistakes the essence of a world economic depression, which is what we have. And, of course, Larry Summers is not going to admit that it's a world economic depression because his ego, his amour propre, is involved. Obama wants a tax on banks. Now, that's fine. A tax on banks, focus it on the biggest banks, focus that tax on the biggest banks, and they'll say, well, the reactionaries will say, oh, no, don't do that because the banks will just pass it on to the people. Great. Tax J.P. Morgan Chase, and if they pass that on to their customers, then their customers will leave, and they'll go to the community bank of Podunk Center where they can get a better deal, and you can escape it that way. So you will be putting the squeeze on the biggest zombie banks. Obama wants pay-go as under Clinton. Again, it doesn't make any sense, and this is even worse than the Keynesians because the Keynesians at least would understand that that's not something you want to do. A bipartisan deficit commission? Not in a million years. Make earmarks public, yeah. Contacts of lobbyists, that's fine too. But let's get to the heart of the matter. The things that you can work with in this Obama speech, and you'll soon find out whether they're just demagogic ploys or whether there's anything serious. They all are nuclear energy, high-speed rail. The oil drilling, too. That's fine. And the $30 billion jobs bill. There's also some stuff about credit, $30 billion in credit for small business. Now, why stop there? Force Bernanke, now that he's politically roughed up, force him to make available 0% credit for the entire productive economy, not the synthetic derivatives and the eternal casino, but hard commodity production. We'll be back in a minute on World Crisis Radio.